And if everybody on the call, if you'll send a quick text to anybody and invite them to get on. So that's how we'll get over the technical issue today. Thank you all for tuning in for our DFW Metro NAACP October general meeting. We have a guest speaker tonight. We have a very, very important election coming up with some amendments on it, and we do not want anyone to get to the polls and be surprised. So I am going to start us out with a word of prayer. And again, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us today. And thank you so much, Representative Bowers, for being with us today. And Andre, thank you so much for communicating with me and help us get this together and plan this. I appreciate that. So let's have a word of prayer. God, thank you so much for this day. We thank you because you are absolutely amazing. We thank you for everyone who has gathered here today, everyone that is en route to get here as well. We pray for traveling grace as people make it home to get in front of their computers to join us. We thank you for all that you're doing. We just ask that you protect us. We're living in a time when there's so much going on around us. So God, we ask for peace. And for those of us that are gathered here as activists, as leaders, as constituents in this area, we just pray that you would bless us with wisdom and guidance as we do what you've called us to do. Lord, as we listen today to the amendments and proposals that will be on our November election, help us to make the right decisions that not only are the best for us, but for our peers as well, and for the majority of us, oh God. Lord, we love you and we praise you. This is our prayer. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. And you all, because we have are very delayed, I want to go ahead and give the rest of this time to Representative Bowers. And at the end, I will acknowledge our visitors and we'll do birthdays. Okay. With no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Representative Bowers.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Crystal, for the invitation. And I want to say thank you to the DFW Metro NAACP. It is an honor to be with you all tonight and to just share a moment and some information about, as Crystal said, this upcoming election with the constitutional amendments on the ballot. It is, just as you all know, it's always better to be informed and educated when you go in the ballot box. So I'm glad to have a moment to share what the 14 amendments deal with. And I can share a little bit about the way I voted, but certainly want to be able to just share with you, what they're about, so you can cast an educated ballot. So diving right in, and before I do, I wanted to share that I do represent House District 113 that covers Rowlett, Garland, and Mesquite, but I am a congressional candidate for Congressional District 32. So I just wanted to say that. So getting back to the subject matter, Proposition 1 is the right to farm proposition, and it was passed as House Joint Resolution 126, and it had unanimous support. It passed with 144 yays and 0 nays. And this one, as we know, it deals with farming. So the proposition deals with local regulations of generally accepting farming and ranching practices, and it would protect individuals from local measures being enacted that are more strict than agreed upon by experts in the farming community. And the Texas Farm Bureau did support this proposition back during the regular session, the 88th legislative session. Proposition 2 deals with child care center exemptions. And this one, I definitely voted yay. And so I would suggest that you vote on this one, because what it will do, the goal of this proposition is to make child care more affordable, not only for the business owner that's running it, but for parents to be able to afford it as well. So I definitely know that passed as SJR 64. And there were some nays, but I voted yay because we definitely need counties and cities to grant that property tax exemption on appraisals for childcare facilities. Proposition 3 is it was the wealth tax ban. It passed as House Joint Resolution 132, and I voted no. This would prohibit what future lawmakers can do by requiring voter approval for tax creation. And we know that that is bad public policy. Proposition 4, everybody remembers that when we went back to the second special session, we dealt with property tax relief and reform again. And so this one, I voted yes for property tax relief. It really passed with an overwhelming amount of support, 143 yeas to 5 nays. But it's designed to keep more money in the pockets of hardworking families. So it was definitely one that I felt was worthy of support. It would increase the valuation of the homestead exemption, as well as put important guardrails in place for the taxation of the elderly and disabled, as well as overall growth of tax rates within jurisdictions. So this one definitely was designed to keep more money in the pockets of our hardworking families. Proposition 5, this was one I voted no on, and it's the Texas University Fund. And a lot of times, I know you all know when you're reading these propositions, the wording and legal jargon can trip you up a bit. And I really had to look at this again because it seems like it's okay. It says that this would establish the Texas University Fund to rename the National Research University Fund. Through its financing mechanisms, it's saying that it would provide money to Texas institutions of higher education as determined by the THECB. But when I went back and looked at it, we do have this analysis, and I went back and looked Prop 5 up. And the one word in there that really made me vote no was the word certain. So it would provide money to certain Texas institutions, not all. So you have to be careful. The University of Texas and Texas A&M systems would not be eligible for this money, as they have their own fund, the PUF. And so you have to be careful when you look at the Texas A&M systems. Prairie View A&M is also one of those schools. So, the word certain was the trigger word for sure. That struck me, and I voted no because it made sure that Prairie View would not receive funding. It wouldn't be eligible. Then when we go on to Proposition 6, this is a Texas Water Fund. Everybody knows that water is a resource that is going to be a primary resource and precious for sure, and a resource that we're going to have to make sure that we're working for. We have the right infrastructure, working for conservation and much needed modernization. So this bill passed unanimously. It was SJR 75, and it established the Texas Water Fund that will provide a dedicated endowment administered by the Texas Water Development Board. So that's going to be for water infrastructure, conservation, and that much needed modernization. Prop 7, the Texas Energy Fund, it passed at 100, and it was SJR 93, 103 yeas, 35 nays. I did vote for this one as well. It will create a focused, it would create a fund that is focused on distributing funds for building new natural gas fuel power plants. And so the goal of this funding is to ensure that there's enough energy generation for our state. during severe weather events. And y'all know what we went through with Winter Storm Uri. So that was definitely one I voted for. And I would suggest that you do Prop 8, the Texas Broadband Infrastructure Fund. We have to look at broadband and making sure that underserved areas have access to reliable internet and 911 services. So House Joint Resolution 125 passed with 125 yays to 10 nays. I did vote for this. And it's the proposition that deals with broadband infrastructure. Prop 9, can't say this enough. This, especially as we're in this special session right now dealing with vouchers, this COLA, cost of living adjustment, that is much needed relief for our retired teachers. You know, it passed unanimously, 140 yays to 0 nays. And voting for this, it would help provide the first adjustment in 20 years, y'all. This would be a big help to our senior citizens to get them a raise on their monthly pension checks. So that's really the one out of all 14 that stuck out for me, as hard as we've been fighting for our retired teachers as well, as our active one. Proposition 10, SJR 87, really, it was almost unanimous too, 125 yays to just 10 nays. I did vote for this. And this one allows medical and biomedical manufacturers to qualify for an exemption on their equipment and inventory that's located here in the state of Texas. It would reduce their overall tax liability and attract more medical manufacturers to Texas. To improve our own healthcare network and solve the current supply chain issues that are there. Prop 11 is an El Paso proposition. So that's going to be, this proposition deals with El Paso County, but it will allow El Paso to issue bonds for development and maintenance of their parks. Prop 12 deals with Galveston. This is the one that abolishes a county treasurer in Galveston, and it's pretty much all the Galveston elected officials in the body supported it, and stakeholders were on the same page about it. So 11 and 12 deal with other parts of the state. 13 is the state judge retirement proposition. And it would raise the mandatory retirement age for state judges from 75 to 79, and the minimum retirement age from 70 to 75 for state judges. This is a good change as our healthcare systems continue to improve and people are willing to work longer. So this is a way to reduce turnover in our courts and provide for the transition of responsibility when certain current judges decide to leave. So that one's a help to the judiciary and the bench. Proposition 14 deals with our parks, and it's gonna, and if this one passes, I did vote yes, but it'll invest more than $1 billion in our Texas parks. To increase our state park acreage per capita and focus on improving our park system for Texas families. So that's a good one too. I'm just looking over the list. I want to see, looks like the only ones that I voted no on were Proposition 3, the wealth tax ban, Proposition 5, the one that only allowed certain Texas universities to receive that funding. And that's it. So it looks like definitely those are the only two that I've voted no and would recommend a no vote on. And I think the other thing, you know, if y'all have questions, I can try to help if you have any questions about any of them. But I think, Crystal, the other thing you wanted me to touch on was the Crown Act, correct?
Yes, and then I know I put a question mark by I think 7. I wanted you to expand a little more on Prop 7 and 6. If
6 and 7.
And then the booklet that you have, Senator West did provided that in a
Yes.
digital form, but I'm trying to find the link so I can share it because it is a link as well for anybody.
Andre might be able to drop that in the chat if he has access to it as well. So if Andre, if you can, if Crystal, if you
I'm also
find-
here. I'm also here helping out the rep. Is
Oh,
that
Trip.
is that the
Okay,
Ledge
Trips.
Council? Is that the Ledge Council summaries?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Okay, I can drop that link for y'all.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Always good to have good staff. Thank y'all so much, guys, both of y'all for being here and helping out. So starting with Prop 6. Proposition 6 is the Texas Water Fund. And it says that the constitutional amendment creating the Texas Water Fund to assist in financing water projects in the state. And I think when you look at this one, and it gets into the fact that we've been under, persistent drought, and then on top of the drought, continued population growth across the state. So we have to look at our water infrastructure, because I know when I served on the committee, the House Committee for Natural Resources, we talked a lot about the water shortage that we were headed towards. And I think back then, the year they were looking at was 2030, that we could be out of water if we didn't look at modernization, changing our water systems, and if there wasn't proper investment for water infrastructure and modernization. And then we definitely have to look at conservation. So what this one would do, it will establish the Texas Water Fund to provide a dedicated endowment that will be administered by the Texas Water Development Board. And it is to do just that. I hope that this answers your question, but one thing that I will share that you'll notice in the analysis, comments in the comments by supporters section, it says Texas is in need of significant financial investment in water infrastructure and water supply development to address both aging infrastructure, the failure of which causes the state to lose an estimated 136 billion gallons of water each year, and often subjects Texans to boil water notices and the need for new water supply projects to support Texas's growing population amid perennial drought conditions that deplete existing water resources. So that is, there's a number of reasons why that endowment is needed.
So let me with
yes.
areas that. So basically, would that say that the state would manage all of the water? Like there's a water board that would manage where there's individual ones now? That's not the same thing, right? That's not exactly.
No, that's not, no. I mean, the Texas Water Development Board is the state board that deals with all those districts, the water districts.
Okay.
I think that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't make it wouldn't make the state cancel out all those water districts. I think, Denise, are you saying one?
Yes, I have a question. My concern with such a precious resource is how will the water be distributed? Will that be fair? Are they going to siphon off water from poorer areas of Texas and give it to the rich neighborhoods? I mean, how does this proposition affect who gets to make decisions about how the water is distributed when it's a scarce resource?
True. And so I think, I do believe what y'all are asking. I don't know that it deals with the the allocation of our water system. That's what I want y'all to recognize. This is not saying that. It is literally saying that the Texas Water Development Board will work with improving our water infrastructure, work on conservation just so we have a proper supply, and the much needed modernization of our water system. Yes.
I'm just a little nervous that some of them are going to sneak in things that benefit the wealthy and hurt the poor.
And I can understand that. I'm trying to see if there's anything else. Tripp helped work on this. Is there anything else? So here's another comment. Let me share this. So the creation of the Texas Water Fund would further, so listen, this is what we're saying. It would further the investment in water infrastructure and would give the Texas Water Development Board flexibility in allocating financial assistance through existing and newly created funds to address water issues with existing water infrastructure and support new water supply projects across the state for years to come. And that's what they're thinking about. They're thinking about, with the growth in population, the fact that it is a precious resource that we could run out of. Small water systems in less urban areas of the state do not have the tax base to support large water infrastructure projects. This might have to do with what y'all are talking about. And a statewide approach. So here's, Crystal, what you were asking. A statewide approach is needed to ensure water resources are available to all Texans. So Denise and Crystal, I think that last bullet point touches on what y'all were concerned about. Does it?
So it's not going to ensure that everybody necessarily gets water per se, or that it is.
It is. It's so that resources are available to all Texans. Now let's look at, since y'all have questions about it, let's look at comments by opponents. So there's one comment by opponents of this proposition that says the Texas Water Development Board should be able to address the state's water needs without the creation of these new programs. So
well, the reason I'm asking, of course, is specifically for Sand Branch. I've been an advocate for Sand Branch. Other colonial areas, I think is what it's called. I'm not sure. That's what that's my concern, is to see if,
because they're colonized, right? And they don't have access to water in that area. And when I was first elected, that part by Kleberg Riley, it was right at the bottom of House District 113. So it touched right there at Sand Branch. So I am familiar with what you're speaking of. But let me look back at it, because I want to see what, I mean, I think most lawmakers felt like, and Tripp or Andre, if y'all want to add anything, certainly put in the chat or chime in, but I do believe that most lawmakers felt, voting for this resolution, that it was certainly going to improve the water infrastructure, current water infrastructure, work on conservation and the modernization of the water systems that we currently have. And I know that the staff put the analysis in there, so there is more in there. So, I mean, it talks about Senate Bill 30 is a supplemental appropriations bill, and that also was enacted during the last regular legislative session. It provides initial funding for the proposed Texas Water Fund. And if the constitutional amendment is approved, that's when it says that $1 billion. What is Tripp saying?
Sorry, I was trying to say in the chat that, yeah, this is a largely just a financial resolution in the way that our budget works. And it's creating, a dedicated fund accessible to the Water Development Board so that they can fully fund all these infrastructure advancements, because as most of you know, it's expensive for upkeep and, transporting water and getting it to people's houses and getting it to businesses and making sure that water remains safe. And so largely what this is focused on is making sure that our infrastructure moving forward is able to be one, both reliable for Texans and also safe. And it's just creating that fund. But this proposition does not deal with allocation or jurisdiction by any means for any sort of water, local water boards.
Okay, thank you. There is another question in the chat about another prop, the one that deals with judges, but I wanted to move, if y'all are okay, I wanted to move to 7. Okay, so Proposition 7 is the Texas Energy, and thank you, Tripp, for sharing more on that. The Texas Energy Fund. What was your question, Crystal?
Oh, I think you just answered mine. It was with the water.
Okay.
What number is the energy one?
Energy Fund is 7.
I have a
comment.
question
Yeah, I have a comment about 7, if I may. All of the groups that are for the environment, the Sierra Club, the climate group, they are all opposed to Proposition 7 because the emphasis is on natural gas extraction, i.e. fracking, and there doesn't seem to be an emphasis instead on renewable energy sources such as solar and wind.
So I'm just taking some notes down. So you're saying all the environmental groups like Sierra Club and all those are against Prop 7 because it doesn't have any emphasis on solar or wind?
Right, and it's emphasizing natural gas. And Governor Abbott is also strongly pushing for more natural gas.
So no new natural gas fueled power plants, right?
That is my personal position. That involves fracking, and fracking produces methane, and methane is the worse than the carbon emissions in terms of pollution of our air.
I'm gonna look at something.
That was my concern as well. Sandy said it well. Yeah.
The fracking.
Well, no, the whole thing about this is about gas and oil, renewables.
Yeah.
So the constitutional amendment providing for the creation of a Texas Energy Fund to support the construction, maintenance, modernization, and operation of electric generating facilities. And I guess if you read it just like that, it says nothing about, you know what I mean? It says nothing about natural gas fueled.
I can forward you, for example, an email I just got today from the citizen.
I'm not questioning it. I'm just saying, I'm agreeing with you. If you read it, if you read what the proposition says, it would lead you to believe that it doesn't deal with any of it.
Yeah, but that's just the basic short version. You have to get into the details
and the weeds of it. Absolutely. So it does say, I want to look at what the comments by opponents. Providing funding to increase the reliability of the Texas grid would be more appropriate through the ratepayer system as opposed to providing state subsidies funded by all taxpayers.
Who does
I mean,
that hurt?
Say
Who
that
does
again,
that hurt?
Denise?
I said, I'm wondering who that would hurt.
Yeah,
I just don't trust the Republicans.
yeah. As you said, I'm glad that we were able to share, Crystal, as you mentioned, the full analysis, because you definitely have to read farther than just between the lines on these. Like, you can't just look at it for on face value.
And what I don't want is anybody in our space to get to in the ballot box. And so just imagine if we're all engaged and others that are not as educated in what's going on. So after today, everybody do their due diligence and reach out to at least 5 people. Share the link. Also direct them to the League of Women Voters Guide. This is being recorded. Tell them to call their representatives, because I'm sure each of them will be more than willing to discuss it with them. That's what they're there for. But share as much information with as many as possible so that people won't freeze up or get behind the ballot box, because you won't be able to pull your cell phones out there. You won't be able to call or anything. So that's why this is very, very important.
Yeah, and of course, feel free to call our office if you have any questions. Andre or Trip, if y'all will put our office contact information in the chat as well. If you got further questions, we'd be glad to help as always. And go ahead. I see you, Crystal, getting ready to say something.
No, I said thank you.
Well, I know you wanted me to share about the Crown Act, and so say that again.
I said absolutely. I think I'm delayed over here, but absolutely.
Well, I mean, we're really proud of this body of work and legislation that was passed in the regular session, and it was House Bill 568. No, House Bill 567. We also passed House Bill 568, but that was our bill that dealt with Alzheimer's and other dementias. So I'll go ahead and mention it since I said that. But House Bill 568 did pass, and it's going to provide training for peace officers when dealing with patients that suffer with Alzheimer's and other dementias. So we're real happy about that one. But looking back at House Bill 567, the Texas Crown Act, Crown, if you are unaware, stands for Creating a Respectful and Open World for Our Natural Hair. And, it took 2 sessions to pass. As you know, and have heard from other lawmakers, it can take multiple sessions before you can get a bill completely across the finish line. It's one thing to pass a bill out of the House, but if it doesn't pass in the Senate or dies there or falls off the calendar, there are all sorts of ways for a bill to die. But this precious bill passed this time, and it will provide great protections. And it was created to provide great protections for men, women, and children that are wearing their hair in protective styles that include braids, locks, twists, Bantu knots, afros, and other things, but in other ways. But we have seen some real tests already of the Crown Act. And so I have to mention that because it was signed into law June 12th and enacted September 1st, but already on August 31st, we had 2 tests. One of them was peacefully resolved, and the principal, when you look at schools, because this deals with schools and employers. So when you look at schools and dress code and their policies, one mother was a strong advocate for her son, Memphis Huerta. And he had his hair braided when he went to school, and they were going to put him in school suspension or ask her to cut his hair. And she said, no, the Crown Act will be law. It will be a law tomorrow. The Crown Act is going into law, and you cannot ask me to cut my son's hair because of that. And so because she was aware and she stated the law as it is and stands today, they said, they dialed it back and said, we're not going to ask you to do that. But you go down to Mont Belvieu, to Barbers Hill ISD, where the first incident in the state that went national, where they had an incident with 2 young men in Barbers Hill ISD. They weren't going to allow them to walk the stage and graduate with their friends or go to prom. And this school district is one of the strongest bad actors again. So this case has gone to federal court. The family is being advised to not take their student Daryl George out of the school, and he has now gone from in-school suspension to an alternative school program because of his hair being braided. So, our office has had to monitor these cases and stay on top of it. It has meant that even as the Crown Act is law and legal, this direct violation of the Crown Act is forcing us to remain vigilant because, they're questioning enforcement. We also have to make sure that, our commissioner is making sure that school districts are updating their school policies. We've talked to our office over this interim since the regular session. We've talked to a number of corporations, Hewlett Packard, Spring Health, and I heard IBM had their own session with employees. But we've talked to employers about how to make sure they're adhering to the law and enforcing it. And this is really now about compliance. And so I think a question, is that a statement that says improve the Crown Act to protect people like the young man who has had to, that is who we were talking about. So I want to address that because when it deals with length, and that was the big loophole that they were trying to find in this legislation. And so I have to say this, the Crown Act, as it is written, does not need to be amended because the hairstyle locks is written into the legislation. So his locks are covered. Anyone that's wearing their hair in locks and growing their locks out is covered. So I'm glad that I can see that the story has been shared about what is happening in Barbers Hill. I think, Crystal, somebody wanted to hear about the voucher bill.
Yes, if you could share about that, the voucher bill for sure.
So we are currently in the 3rd special session. Vouchers were on the call, and right now the Senate passed the bill, and it flew out of the Senate, has come over to the House, but it has been referred, and we may be still waiting for a referral. Andre or Tripp, are y'all there still?
There are 2 school dealing with vouchers. The main voucher one has been referred, but no action has been taken past that one. The second one dealing more on the finance side and touching on a couple of other issues. has not been referred currently.
And so, you know, my vote and stance has been a no for the entire time. And I am a strong no against vouchers, and do not believe that our public dollars should be used to subsidize private schools. And, that I believe in our public school systems, and the fact that our neighborhood schools are certainly underfunded. So, it's a long time problem that we really need to fix, and we need to fight hard to make sure that this doesn't happen.
Is there much that can be done now to stop this? Or, I mean, does it, because I think it already passed in the House, correct? Is that correct? It already passed no.
In the Senate.
Okay.
So it passed in the Senate. The House, thankfully, we keep blocking it. I think there were 24 Republicans that voted for the Herrera amendment to not allow vouchers. And from over the weekend, I heard that there were about 4 Republicans that were on the fence that we might have been able to get on our side, so we're still working on making sure we have the numbers to stop this. But I'll say this, y'all know as well as I do, and I think we're all there, that there could possibly be another special, because if we don't let it go through. The other thing that's happening is the governor is holding teacher pay raises hostage. So that's what we really have to be concerned about, because he could just bring us right back.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Which is likely to happen. We have to remain vigilant here as well, and certainly do everything we can to fight these.
When is the last day of this special session?
When is the last day?
Yes, ma'am.
It can go 30 days, and we open this session on the 9th, right, you guys?
Yes, ma'am.
So technically the last day would be into November 9th, making it a full 30.
Sounds like we need to have another legislative advocacy day. That's why I'm asking, do we have time to mobilize to have a?
I know that's a good question. I know people were asking, do people need to come and testify? I mean, it's certainly got to go through committee. So I would say yes. And over the weekend, I was at a church where people they had letters they were, writing and submitting in opposition to vouchers, and all of that is necessary. You can sign up against the bill online. If you can't make it in person, I always say the most effective way is to come once you know that it's been referred or will be heard in committee. And as you said, an advocacy day is definitely right in line with what we need to happen. That I think, I see the question, Jeffrey. Thank you for the question. Should we be mobilizing against vouchers themselves or not using tax dollars for school vouchers? I think it's against vouchers. But it's twofold, because that is what will happen if we allow vouchers to become a reality here in Texas. That our tax dollars will be used.
Right. And there are more rural areas I think all areas are going to be impacted by this, but also I think those that are for it, they are definitely a minority. because the majority of the state, our metropolitan areas may be more populated, but there's a vast amount of Texas that is rural. And in those communities, they don't have private schools.
Right.
I'm from East Texas, from Longview, and I can only think of one private school in that area. So even if you say 400 or 500 students were to pack up and take advantage of this voucher, those schools don't even have the capacity to handle that influx of students.
No. And I want to add that superintendents are saying in the state, across the state, that it will affect enrollment, as you know, because, parents that are choosing to accept the vouchers and want choice, as they say, I don't know if that's really what it is. It is, it will make them take their students out of our public schools, taking them to, and the voucher won't even cover the full amount. That's what, $8,000, and that is not the full cost of, so only families with means could use the voucher and pay the extra, for their students to go to those private schools. So it really doesn't do what they're telling you it's going to do. And we've been saying for some time that vouchers are really a scam, that this is a scam. And that certainly the other thing that once you take your kids out of public schools, that transportation is not going to be, there's no public school transportation at those schools. What else did they tell me? They were giving examples of parents just deciding to homeschool and taking, so then they, a single mom of 3 might just say, I'm going to just keep my kids at home then. And, she'd rather have the voucher and the money.
And also it seems to be a way of segregating
Absolutely.
us as well. If there are just so many attempts to take us back to before 1964, 1965 and all of that. If you talk about the history, the omission of certain history, there's a phrase, if you don't know your history, you're bound to repeat it. I may have said that wrong. Please forgive me if I did. But again, I always said we cannot sleep on it, and we cannot think that it is impossible. I remind people that you have to vote in Texas. You have to be registered to vote within 30 days. With so much Hulu, YouTube, people don't watch the news. So if they were to find out 2 weeks before the election and they're not registered to vote, it would be nothing they could do. So just like so many voting rights were stripped from us, I think that was back in 2021, an attempt to enact slavery could happen. Yeah. So many people think like, oh, that's not possible. Oh, yes, it is. And especially in the southern states, because again, we're so used to it being 30 days before, we think that's the norm because some of us haven't lived anywhere else. But there are some jurisdictions that you can register to vote the same day, 7 days before. The southern states do everything they can to disenfranchise our vote. Yes, Candace, I'm sorry. So,
hi, Sarah.
You're muted, Candace.
Yes, it took me a second. Good evening. And hello, State Representative Bowers. One thing that you were talking about in terms of segregation, we know that $8,000, you are absolutely right, will not cover I'll just name some schools: Ursuline Academy, Green Hill, Hockaday, Cistercian, Nolan Catholic School. Those schools, $8,000 will not cover everything that's needed. And then when you start thinking about students in special populations, as a 30-year, public school teacher, I think about special education. And it was hard enough just being a regular, school teacher in a general population, but the special needs of certain students that will be not covered in their IEPs.
Mhm.
And I'm just talking about the average student whose parents cannot afford the extra added support that they need. They're not thinking about it. And then also, all of the children eat free in the public schools because under Title I, the children are able to get breakfast. They're able to get a hot lunch. And in certain schools, even in Dallas ISD, depending on the principal, some of those schools have dinner. They feed the kids for dinner before they let them go home. And so we have to start thinking about that. And then what does bilingual education look like? And I'm not just speaking in terms of the Spanish population. There are so many different languages that are even addressed in DISD. So if those children are pulled out, where are they going to go? Where are they going to get the support? Are they going to have translators in all of those various, various languages? You have to look at a school like Emmett Conrad, which has many countries represented in that one population. If a student is to take, if the parent takes the voucher, where are they going to go? Because they don't have the supports in place. And then you also have to look at, the social economic divide. It's not just racial, it's social economic as well. And so we're not schooled on what it looks like to homeschool. There are requirements to make sure that your child going through homeschooling is of the standard which will be acceptable so that your child will be able to be certified, so that your child will be able to get a diploma. So when people say, oh, I'm just going to keep my kids at home. Well, no, the state is still going to see what curriculum you're using and how you're teaching your kid at home. So it's not, oh, I'm a babysit my babies at home. There's still a state curriculum that you have to cover. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Candace. Does anybody else have any last comments before we wrap up our questions? Okay. Well, thank you so much, Representative Bowers. And I apologize for starting late and for our technical difficulty on our end, but we definitely appreciate you tuning in, sharing with us. And if anybody needs the recording, I will just let me know so I can get that to you. Representative Bowers, did you have any last comments that you wanted to share with us before we close up?
No, just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for having us tonight. I'm glad to join your meeting, and we're glad to be back any other time. And just, to encourage people to really take a look at that proposition, analysis of the constitutional amendments and take a deep dive. The analysis is not very long per proposition, so it gives you, though, enough information to be really educated on what you're voting on. So thank you again for having us tonight.
Thank you. And for the sake of time, because we are a little behind schedule, I have dropped the newsletter in the chat. If you did not receive the newsletter, please opt in at DFW Metro NAACP to get that newsletter. And again, for those that the text message did not arrive or it came late, we do apologize for that, but I will provide. And if you all hang on a second, actually, I'm going to see if I can grab the link now so that you all can share that link with others. Because again, the importance to me for us to have Representative Bowers with us tonight is that these are constitutional amendments, and we cannot stress how important this is, that everybody is knowledgeable and understands, because although we are all very, very literate, when you get to reading those propositions, I think they are phrased to trip us up a little bit. And the reality is they really should be on a level of an 8th grade level, because we don't really know the reading level and comprehension level of people. So when you're the general public, so reaching the general public, it should be phrased differently, but it's not. And we know this on purpose. So I'm doing my part, and Representative Bowers and others, to make sure we get that information out. So I am Representative Bowers' office shared. Can somebody help me find that in the chat, the link for the amendments, the pamphlet that she had that has been prepared? We want to share that with you all. And I'm going to grab, I just dropped the information for our newsletter, and then I'm going to get the link